Good morning. This is Steve, and I'm not sure whether to say Merry Christmas or Happy New Year. One of my friends this week posted on Facebook and said, "Are any of the rest of you having difficulty remembering what day of the week it is?" And I thought, that's a strange question to ask. But she said, with Christmas in the middle of the week, I don't know if I've got a whole week ahead and it's Monday, or it's the weekend and I'm supposed to be relaxing. And I thought, what in the world does having Christmas in the middle of the week have to do with what day of the week it is? But then I crawled into bed last night and I was telling Vivian what I was going to be talking about today, and she said, "You can't talk about Christmas tomorrow. Christmas is already past." And I realized it does matter what day of the week Christmas falls on. Because is this Christmas weekend, or was last weekend Christmas weekend? Is this the weekend of New Year's, or is next year New Year's? So today you're going to get a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's sermon. Okay? So let's start with Christmas. The Christmas story is told twice in the Bible. The first is in Matthew chapter 2, and it starts out with the wise men in search of a baby. And instead, they encounter a malicious, conniving king. Eventually, he guides them to the baby, but when they find the baby, it triggers the flight of the baby and its family into Egypt and the slaughter of all the children in the neighborhood. And at the end of the Christmas story, as told by Matthew, Joseph, Mary, and Jesus are living as refugees in Nazareth of Galilee. Anything but a warm, romantic, nostalgic story. Now, the other place where the story is told is in the Gospel of Luke, chapters 1 and 2. This gospel story, this Christmas story, starts with the mystery surrounding the birth of John the Baptist, Jesus' cousin. And then we've got the pregnancy, and Mary and Joseph are wrestling with, what does this mean? Do we just go on? Then they're hit with the double whammy of having to travel to Bethlehem to register to be taxed. Oh, joy. But when they get there, Mary is ready to give birth, and there's no place for them to be. And she has to give birth in what we call a stable today, what in those days was a dank cave that smelled of sheep. This is anything but a romantic story. And who's there to welcome this baby they've been promised? The shepherds, and an old lady and an old man when they go to the temple. And the story as told by Luke ends up with Mary, well, to use the King James Version, pondering these things in her heart. This is Steve's paraphrase, trying to figure out what all this means. Now, when we tell the story in church, it's usually the kids' version, all about the romance and the supernatural. I mean, wise men traveling through the desert on camels looking for the baby. And this is an adventure. And we rush through or skip over the violence and the injustice and the confusion that is embedded in the story. At the center of it, though, is this helpless, vulnerable human baby who is at once a baby and Almighty God, King of the universe. One of my friends this week confessed how she was struggling to come to grips with the pain that has entered her life this year. Her mother has died. Her granddaughter has disappeared. And yet she's surrounded by family and friends and this festive atmosphere that she wants to be a part of. She wants to give her heart over to celebration, and instead she finds herself weeping inside. She's not alone. Within my circle of friends are others who have lost loved ones. Our family lost a loved one just this week. Others are homeless, destitute, traumatized, discriminated against, suffering from injustice, incarcerated. No, they're not on Facebook, but they were, and I don't have touch with them anymore. Christmas time is confusing, and this meme is one of the favorites on Facebook right now. It showed up in May. This picture of a screaming, angry woman and this confused cat who has just received a plate full of vegetables. But the phrases that are, the captions that are being put on it, this is just going like popcorn viral around Facebook. So I've added my own that symbolizes the conflict that we have at Christmas. Even in the Christmas story, some of us are experiencing pain, and it's dominating our lives. And we're like the mothers in the Christmas story who are screaming, "My baby is dead!" And others of us, life is going pretty good, and we really don't want the equilibrium to be disturbed. And we're saying, peace on earth, baby. Okay? Get over it, okay? It's time to celebrate. So is it any wonder that after we send out our Christmas cards and we come to church and we have our happy nativity with the romantic, nostalgic story of Christmas, we go home, we open our presents, we eat our Christmas dinner, and then comes January, and it feels gray and it turns to blue, and darkness descends on our hearts. Now, I know this doesn't happen to everybody, but it happens to more of us than want to admit it. As you know, this year I've been studying resilience, how to deal with trauma and the bad things that have happened in our lives. Programs that aim at building resilience can be divided into two philosophical camps. One views resilience as coming from a source of strength that's inside of us, that we have to discover and find and nurture and accept. The other group of resilience programs focuses on a strength that we find outside of ourselves. And as I've studied this year, I was surprised that both of these camps are represented in the Bible. Now, we usually think of the internal focus of strength as being associated with Eastern religion, because it's a great part of Buddhism and the Eastern philosophy that's been transmitted to the West. But it's also found in the Bible. Finding strength and peace inside of ourselves based on the identity that we share with the rest of the universe. On the other hand, humanism tells us that our strength comes from outside of ourselves, from the community that we live in, the quality and the quantity of relationships and connectedness that we have. And these programs on resilience focus on building those relationships and helping us to choose positive relationships to make us strong. That's also in the Bible. But the Bible doesn't stop there. It offers a third source of strength, which is what we've been leading up to in our presentations earlier. So I'm not going to spell that out today. Instead, what I want to share with you are 5 anchors that have become real in my life this year as sources of strength in dealing with trauma in my life. The first is a hairbrush. Now, it can be my hairbrush, it can be your hairbrush, or it can be your dream of your hairbrush for some of us. Whatever the case may be, every time you see a hairbrush, I want you to remember this promise from Matthew chapter 10, verse 30. Jesus promises that every hair on your head is counted by God. God knows us so intimately that he knows when a hair is still on your head or when it's entangled in your hairbrush or has fallen to the floor. That's how well he knows you. You are not alone. You have never been alone. You never will be alone. That is the promise that Jesus brought to us from heaven. Remember that every time you pick up your hairbrush or think about your hairbrush. He knows you. The second, neighbors. In Matthew chapter 22, verse 39, Jesus quoted a commandment of Moses. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. It's an impossible commandment without the first commandment, which he also quoted, love the Lord your God with all your heart. Now, I'm speaking of this as a Christian, as a religious person. For me, I find that knowing that God loves me makes it much easier for me to love myself. And much loving myself makes it much easier for me to love the people around me. Because it's easy to love my neighbor when they're nice. It's easy to love my neighbor when they only need a little bit. It's easy to love my neighbor when they make me feel good or when they are like me. It's much harder if they're nasty or if they're demanding or if they get offended at things that I can't understand or if they don't understand the trauma that's going on in my life and dismisses as if, get over it already. Loving those kind of people is hard unless I love myself because of who I am loved by. He is your love. Third, a sign from God. Now, I know it's a little hokey, but you needed to lighten up after that last one. Okay? The real anchor is not the sign, but the people running in the background. Okay? In Hebrews chapter 4, verses 15 and 16, Paul says that Jesus understands what we are going through because he has walked the path before. And so whenever we are in need, we can and will find help if we turn to him. You can turn to him whenever you want to. He's much more than a cheerleader. He's a coach. He's the water boy. He's the whole support team for your marathon. Remember that every time you see someone running alongside the road or running on a track or just walking. He is your help. The fourth is sunshine. In 1 Peter 5:7, we're told, turn all of your anxieties over to him. Why? Why should I just turn my anxieties over to him? Will he solve all of my problems with the snap of his fingers? No. Well, if you don't turn your anxiety over to him, you're headed straight for hell. I would say that is not what this verse is about. All of our anxieties end in him because he cares for us. He loves us. The gospel doesn't promise us easy street. And fear never saved a single person. I know that's my assertion, that's my perspective. You may disagree, but I would assert that fear never brings us into a relationship of love and intimacy with God. And that is what being saved means. What saves, what heals, what lifts us up out of the ditch, which turns us around and puts our feet on the right path, is the love of God. He cares for you. Saving mankind is not a job. It's not a profession. It's not something he gets paid for. It's not a hobby. It's not an academic exercise for him. It's his life. It's his everything. It's personal. It's real. It's in the now. He cares for you, always has, and always will. And this year, every time you see the sunshine, or feel its warmth on your skin, or see it track across the floor through a window, remember, he is your peace. And finally, tears. Tears, yes. Revelation 21:4 is the happy ending of the Bible. We have the promise that God will wipe away all tears. There will be no more death, no more grief, no more crying, no more pain, forever and ever. Amen. Remember that with every tear you cry. There will be an end to all of this. He knows you. He is your love. He is your help. He is your peace. He will wipe away all tears. 5 anchors, 5 strengths. And all of this because he chose to become a vulnerable human baby. Stepped into and shared the violence, the injustice, the chaos of our lives to bring us the wonder, the mystery, the power of a God who knows our pain and makes it his. This is the meaning of Christmas for me. This is what gives hope for a happy new year. And that's what resilience means to me with a capital R. What does Christmas mean to you? What does the Christmas story bring to your life? Is it just an empty romantic fable? Or have you found the meaning behind the story? If you have, you found a major antidote, a major strength in the fight for resilience. Have a good year, and welcome to 2020.